Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Painted Profits. And if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you're going to notice a little bit different backdrop. We've got some construction going on in the background. We're actually in Birmingham, Alabama, hanging out with my guy, Damian Lupo, founder, CEO of EQRP. We're going to be talking about qualified retirement plans, how you can set up your own as an entrepreneur, why you should probably be doing that. But we're also going to talk about Damian's story into entrepreneurship. You've been in the game for a long time now. How long have you been an entrepreneur?
I mean, since I was 11, I started a business, hired my parents.
Did you ever work for anybody else?
Yeah, it didn't work. I got fired.
Okay, so
even as a volunteer, I got fired. It never worked.
Typical entrepreneur story. Yeah. So we're going to go through the roller coaster journey, and in between that, we're going to impart some wisdom on you guys about why you need to be managing your retirement as an entrepreneur. Specifically, that's what this podcast is all about. If you're an entrepreneur, you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking about how to make that transition to entrepreneurship, this is going to be a great show for you because there's a lot of irrational fears about benefits that you need to keep when you're staying employed that you can actually just handle and manage for yourself. So anyways, without further ado, Damian, my guy, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
It's good to have you in Birmingham, man.
I know. So I've been dying to do this podcast for a while, let alone this is like our first travel to do a podcast in person. So it's super special for me. But before we jump too far in, I want everybody to just understand who you are and how you got to where you are today, because I think it's important to just set the frame of everything we're going to talk about today. This dude learned by being in the fire. You've been baptized in the deep end quite a few times. So who are you and how'd you get to where you are today?
I'll tell you what, man, I'm not an ivory tower guy. There's no learning in some classroom. This was all in the mud and it was muddy, bloody. People question, who am I? I'm a guy that said the system doesn't work for me. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people are saying the system doesn't work for them in a lot of different ways right now. Yep. Back 25, 30 years ago, I went to college and ended up getting thrown out because I started a bookstore on campus and it put the other bookstore out of business. And it was great for me because I paid for school in a week. Right. And I was just finding a problem. This is before Amazon got into that space. But it was, for me, I was looking for ways to create value. Back then I was trying to make some money because I wanted to pay for college. And it was just one of those things. I had lots of ideas, more ideas that didn't work, that failed. And so I think that's one of the big differences between entrepreneurs that you talk to at 40 or 50 that have been entrepreneurs for 50 years or 30 or 50. I mean, in my case, it's been 35 years of being an entrepreneur and I'm 45. Yeah. So it just means that it's in my blood. And so I'm not willing to lose and stop. Right. And that's really what I'm always curious about people when they say, I have an idea for a business. And I'm like, all right, are you willing to go through massive pain for many years? And usually you can tell just by the way that they kind of hesitate, they're not. In my case, it was one thing after another, trying, getting beat up, losing money, going broke, going bankrupt multiple times, and then going, okay, interesting, learn something from that. And so 70 plus businesses later, we're in a place where some things have worked, most things haven't, and then we talk about the winners, but we learn from the losers.
Man, I don't even have anything to add to that. But I do have a question about the 70 businesses. So I want to know, what was the dumbest business idea that you had? and then obviously EQRP has been incredibly successful, but you've had a ton of other. What are the handful that were like really good businesses out of the 70 that you tried?
Well, here's the really bad ones, the terrible ones. One of the funniest ones, I had a coupon clipping business in my first year of college. It was basically it was one of these infomercial things. I went to this seminar for a couple hours, and they said, you can buy one of these businesses. Each business in a box is $500. One of them was college scholarships, so I could package up scholarships that people could go in and apply for. Another one was the coupon business, and they pitched it. They're like, you can literally, for $5, you can get $500 worth of coupons. And I was like, this is great. People are going to love this. And I had absolutely zero orders. And so I had this business, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know that it might be good to have an 800 number. I had a local number. This is back in the 90s. Yeah. I didn't know anything, and I just was out there just trying things. I was like, okay, well, that's
the difference, though.
That's the difference. And so that was one of the dumber ones. I had an international iPad trading business in 2010 when I was working on a U.S. Senate campaign. I thought a side hustle would be great. I'll import and export iPads, and then I realized the tariffs and things were like more than the iPad, and I was like, this business sucks. Yeah. So you don't know what you don't know, and that's the interesting thing. We think we have all the I know this and I don't know that, but what you don't know is you don't know what you don't know, and I didn't know anything about tariffs. I didn't even know that I needed to know. Yeah. And so there was just all these ideas, and to really put this in perspective, I think one of the problems that people have is they have too many things they try to do at once. And I remember about 12 years ago, I was thinking about what I was going to do after I melted down in 2008 and lost 25 million. And I said, well, what should I do? And so I ended up doing like 7 things at once, and nothing worked because it was fractured energy. And it wasn't like Richard Branson, who has 50 companies, or one of these big entrepreneurs. They have CEOs. They have companies that have systems. I had 7 jobs.
Yeah.
And
You're the CEO for
I was the CEO of everything.
The salesperson, the marketing person.
It was a disaster. So that's one of the huge lessons is go do something, do some things, but do one thing at a time and go deep on it. And if you don't like it, move to the next thing, but don't do 7 at once. Because you ever talk to somebody and you're like, what do you do? And they're like, well, I do this and this and this. And you're like, basically, you're a loser because you're not focused. And that's the difference between success and ultimately not getting anywhere and spinning your wheels is focus.
100%. So you had a killer run in real estate, and you just alluded to it, lost 25 million. Was real estate something that was always on the radar? At what point did you decide that, hey, I'm going to go deep on building a portfolio? And then can you run us through that journey of, hey, started, grinded into 2008, and then blew up?
That was not my plan I was working at Wells Fargo, and then I was invited to not work there anymore. and then I ended up working I had an insurance agency. I was maybe the youngest or one of the youngest agents in history in farmers insurance. Had an agency when I was 19 in Arizona, and I did that for about a year and a half. And then a friend of mine went out and started reading books on real estate flipping and things. And he said, hey man, I got a deal. And he said, you want to be my partner? And I said, I don't know what you need me for. I don't know anything about real estate. And he said, well, I need some money. And I said, man, I'm a broke insurance agent. He goes, well, it's only $6,000 because we were taking over a mortgage. And I said, all right. So I took a cash advance out on my credit card, ended up buying this thing. And so in partnership, we went out to remodel the house, and he told me he was too busy to help. And so I had to figure out how to electrify myself, which means getting electrocuted and doing electrical work and, falling off the roof. And like, I was doing all this stuff, and it started there. It was really just, I thought, okay, I could be a partner. And then I went to a seminar and saw Robert Kiyosaki and some other people and got excited, bought all the tapes, and came home with a couple suitcases and said, this is my thing. Like, I'm so excited about this. And then all of my psychology got in the way, and I almost went bankrupt the first 6 months because I wasn't actually doing anything with the property I bought. It was like I was collecting real estate, but I needed to have a collection of tenants or people. And I didn't understand what I was doing. I just thought, oh, cool, I'm an investor.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. And once I realized I was going to go bankrupt, it hit me, and I said, this is going to be the shortest real estate career in history unless I do something. So I actually answered my phone. I put some more ads out, about 7 houses the next 30 days.
Wow.
And then it went from there to 150 houses over the next 4 years. And that's where this thing spiraled up before it crashed down.
And that's how you ended up in Birmingham. That's how you made some roots here, right?
Yeah. A couple years in, another interesting lesson or mistake is deciding that the diamonds in your backyard aren't shiny enough, so you go to somebody else's yard. It's that book, Acres of Diamonds. That's what I did. I said, Phoenix isn't good enough, so where else can I find the next Phoenix? And so I bounced all over the country, ended up in Birmingham, and did a bunch of houses here. It was kind of an accident. And what I've learned over time is that whatever wealth you're trying to create, whatever value you're interested in conveying on other people or building, it's literally in your backyard. There's a $1 billion opportunity a mile away from where you sit right now, wherever you're listening. If you're driving, look around. There's $1 billion sitting in front of you, and you're oblivious to it because your reticular activator doesn't even know it's there.
Right.
So we tend to go searching instead of just stopping and looking around. And that's a big difference in how much time people waste because they're constantly chasing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the difference. I mean, entrepreneurs just see those little gaps in the market and figure out how to go fix them. And sometimes we're thinking way too big, like, I got to build the next unicorn company. It could be as simple as, hey, I noticed that all the HVAC contractors in our market don't answer their phone, or they don't run paid media. We could probably do that better and just be better marketers and own a share of the market. I mean, people are actively searching for that.
There's idiocy in every industry.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think we're going to have a shot at a similar... So I feel like the era that I grew up in around real estate, like flipping was the rage. Everybody was doing it. I mean, I know tons of people who killed it in Arizona in that market. You came to Birmingham because it was cheapish, $80,000 to $100,000 houses you could buy. Do you think we're going to see that again? Because I was looking at real estate while I was here, right? It's one of my favorite things to do. And I'm like, man, I don't see anything less than like 500,000, 600,000. right? Do you think we're going to get another shot at it given where the market's at? Or
So one of the things that I learned was in trying to force things when you're a hunter, when you're flipping is hunting and investing is farming. And what's interesting when you're farming, you have natural forces from the universe, from God, that are supporting you there. And if you go out and you plant a seed and then you nurture the seed and you let the sun and the seasons and the rain do its thing, you have this beautiful thing that happens. It grows. And I made a ton of money when I let things grow, when I would let them grow. When I started harvesting, when I tried to flip, my experience was really bad. I learned what foreclosure felt like, and and I learned how to write checks to sell properties. Now, if you're not following what I just said, it means I wrote checks and I didn't get a check when I sold.
Here's some money.
Yeah, I did that several times, and I was like, this flipping thing sucks. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I'm literally paying somebody to buy my property. So is there going to be? I think there's always people, and there's people that do this and make money and do better than me. One of the things I don't like about flipping is, for most people, they're going to get hammered with taxes because it's ordinary income. And when the tax code is set up to incentivize certain things, tax code is not set up to flip properties. So it wants you to invest and create housing. It wants you to create commercial. It wants you to create things, not skim profits. Like, if you have some background in the financial markets and commodities and things, and when you're trading, that's active income. When you buy something and you sell it 5 years later, you have capital gains. And so our system is not set up for people to skim things off the top. It doesn't. Congress, in their wisdom, doesn't really like that.
Yeah.
And so, do I think it's, to your question, do I think it's coming? Do I think there's going to be opportunity? I think there's always opportunity. But I think that's one of the least sound fundamental plans for somebody to go flip properties. I think there's always going to be opportunity, but it's not going to be obvious. It's not going to just fall in your lap. You got to go find it.
Yeah.
There's opportunity, but you got to find the thing that's messy. You got to go solve a problem. Problems don't sit there and go, hey, here, I'm a problem. Just come take me and you can make $1 million.
Yeah, there's an inefficiency in every market. And part of why I want to ask that question is a lot of our audience are what I call entrepreneurs looking to make that leap. And for whatever reason, real estate is always the path that they think they're going to use to, like, finally break free of the golden handcuffs. It's like, dude, 200 to $300 a month is not going to change your life. Mm-mm. So then they resort to flipping or wholesaling or something like that. I just don't see that being a very viable way, but there's mispricing in every market. I mean, just look at this building we're sitting in right now, right? You were telling me about the deal that you put together on this, bought it, now you're doing a sell lease back. I'm looking at buying a 35,000 square foot building where the market price is 200 and I'm getting it for $107 a square foot. But if you're not in the game, you're not digging deep, looking for those opportunities in your backyard, you're never going to find them. So,
well, and here's one that I participated in probably 15 years ago, and it's an opportunity for somebody that's an entrepreneur that's looking for a real estate opportunity. Wholesaling is one of those things that I thought, this actually is great. And what my participation was, a guy came to me and he was out there marketing to out of state owners of houses, and he would get these houses tied up, and then he would go to the local investors and he'd be like, hey, I've got a great deal. And he was selling it for 35% below real value.
wow.
So there's a great opportunity. Well, he was buying it at 45% below. So he had this nice 10%. So it's $10,000-$15,000 he's making. And he would not own it. He would literally just sell his contract to one of us investors. And it was funny. I showed up at a house, and he's there, and there's another guy there. We both happen to be from Alaska. This is in Arizona, right? And we're like, all right, what do we do?
Right.
We both want the house. He's like, well, it's $60,000, and we're like, okay, we put in 10, it's worth 100. That's I mean, we're talking about lipstick, pigs, pretty pig,
Yeah.
carpet and paint, and so I looked at the guy and I said, tell you what, you and I are probably going to be at this house, another house again at the same time. So how about one of us writes a check to the other one for $3,000, and the other one takes the house, and on the next house we flip roles. And he goes, cool. I said, great. Which one do you want? He said, I'll write you a check. So I showed up for a meeting, made $3,000, went home. He literally wrote me a check, and I was done.
Deal.
And he made $30,000. So people would be like, that's stupid. Why didn't you? It's like, look, there's so much abundance out there, and you don't have to get greedy. It was a way, like the wholesaling space. Gerald, anyway, the guy that did the deal, that brought us the deal, he was doing a lot of those deals, and it was about marketing. Yeah. It was about him reaching out. And what's the risk? Some marketing dollars. It was actually a grind, though, for he had to do some work, and then he didn't have to paint anything. He literally handed it off. So that may be a great way for people to enter and kind of pivot without taking on hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in debt, and I had no idea what they're doing. That may be an option.
Yeah, creating value. We always said you need somebody to find it, somebody to make it viable, somebody to get over the line, somebody to sell it on the back end, and somebody to bring the money. Right. You can be one of the five. There's sounds like 100% equity, split 5 ways. You can make money. So let's walk forward. So you're killing it. You get 150 homes in your
Yeah, I had
portfolio?
about 150.
And those are all cash flowing rentals. You're not flipping or doing anything like that.
I was not flipping. The theory was that they were all cash flowing. And cash flow is a theory. It's like a pro forma. It's a theory.
Right.
And until you have cash flow and until you've gone to the end of your year and you've seen how much expense you've had, you don't know if you've had cash flow. But if your rent's $1,200 and your underlying cost or mortgage or whatever is $1,000, in theory you have $200 of cash flow. But the reality of that is definitely different. It's like when you said $200 or $300 isn't going to change your life. That's true, and it's often negative $200 or $300, or like, oh, I got to replace the roof, or it's vacant, or whatever. But what was your original question?
The question was just kind of fast forwarding to 150 homes, and then 2008 hits, and the world melts down, and you get your ass handed to you.
Well, so leading up to that, one of the things that I did that was a huge mistake, and this is being young, this is being greedy, this is being whatever you want to call it. I looked at my portfolio and said, you know what? I want to harvest. I want a Ferrari. Like I want some juice. Like I was impatient in my 20s, too much money, all excited, thought I was King Kong, and so I started harvesting. I was selling some of these in 2004 and 5. Phoenix went vertical. Like things were going up 10 to 15% a month.
Wow. This
is when you know that you're in a bubble top. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. So I was selling things as fast as possible. And oftentimes there would be 30, 40, 50, sometimes $100,000. I remember one time I was trying to get back to the U.S. to sign documents because I had several sales and it was a $250,000 cash event for me, just like cash. And so I was harvesting the equity. Now, it's not necessarily terrible to harvest some of your equity unless you're just going out and spending it. And it's like, oh, yeah, because now it's gone. It's not producing any little cash flow or anything.
So damn hard to get it, and now you're just going to go throw it away.
And the stuff, it was, so there's a lot of work up front, and then I let the sun and the rain do its thing. Like these things grew, equity grew, and it took 3, 4, 5 years. And that's one of the things people don't get. Like if you give things time. So I gave it time, and then I harvested and I went and spent it and had a good time. And I thought, all right, now I'm super smart. and then I was like, all right, now I don't have any houses. Like, cause I sold everything off, but it was actually very smart considering the timing at a top. One of the dumber things I did, you talked about businesses that maybe mistakes and things. I went right back into the market because I thought everybody's making money flipping. So I decided I was going to become a full flipper at that point. Made all this money doing fundamentally smart real estate, and then I go out and ended up buying some houses, remodeling them, and then either losing money or several of them went back to the bank. So that was what happened in like 2006 and 7. At the same time, I went out and said, I'm going to go develop. I'm going to develop condos in Birmingham, giant apartments outside of Graceland in Memphis. I'm going to do multi-million-dollar bulldoze and rebuild at the ocean in Maine next to Bush's estate. Like I was doing all these things again simultaneously, 7 different things that were supposed to make me $1 million each. And in 12 months, not only did those all fail and lose me $1 million or more on each one of them, the whole portfolio collapsed. And so I went from millions in net worth to negative $5 million. So $20 million portfolio to negative $5 million. Like this is, it was, I think I was wrong on everything.
Yeah.
And that happens when you have big economic cycles, but the reality is we're going to be wrong on a lot of things in general. I just didn't realize you could be wrong that much at once.
You hadn't gone through a cycle at that point yet?
Not really. In 2000, when the .com melted down, I had money there, and so I learned about margin trading. I did that one time, lost all my money in like 12 minutes. I mean, legitimately, I was like, okay, I'd saved up, had like $40,000, and it went to zero because I had margined it up and things.
I got levered to the gills.
I got levered. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, this is easy money. I can use somebody else's money, and it's only whatever you.
What are these idiots doing over here?
Yeah, I thought, and then I realized I was the idiot. I was like, okay, so I had lost it, and one of the things I learned was when I talk about losing 25 million. That's a lot, but you know what? So is the person that has 20,000 that loses it all, because I've been in those spots where that's all I had, and then going back to zero sucks. So it's just because it's a bigger number doesn't mean it's not everything you have. It's also when I look at people and they're investing and they say, well, I'm investing $50,000. And I'm like, well, you got 5 million, 50,000 doesn't matter. The person that has 70,000 that invests 20,000, I'm like, you really care about this. Like you're really in. Yeah. So it's always an interesting thing, the percentage of your chunk, whether you lose it or whether you got skin in the game. Like it's very relative, and it doesn't matter about the big numbers. Like somebody that has Elon Musk goes and buys Twitter. If Twitter goes to zero, it doesn't even impact him.
Yeah.
People are like, $40 billion, what is wrong with you? It's like, yeah, he wanted the little bird. He wanted to go kill the bird.
Yep.
So he did.
bird's dead.
Bird's dead.
So hindsight's 2020. What would you say that you do different now when starting up and scaling into a business? Because it sounds like to me you caught the wave at the right time, and you were running and gunning, which is awesome. Maybe not as sophisticated as you are now. I know now you're a CCIM, aren't you? Right. So you maybe didn't have all those underwriting skills that you had back then, and forecasting debt, and
I didn't have any of the skills or any of the experience.
yeah. So hindsight's 2020. Market melts down again in 2024, which very well could happen. How do you play the game a little different?
Well, one, I'm looking at fundamentals. I'm not, there's opportunity. And if you sit around and wait, you're going to look back and go, God, how many times have we been around people and they're like, if I had just done this, it's like, hey, okay, great. Yeah, easy.
You can play that game forever.
Monday morning, quarterbacking.
Yeah.
So when we have the cycles again, one of the things that I'm not going to do is chase shiny objects. So I have these businesses that have great people. And so am I going to go launch something? If I have great people, great operators, like we have a manufacturing organization in Arizona called FrameTech that we've got world-class operators that have been doing this business for 30 to 50 years. Like our average tenure in this space is like 20 plus years.
Wow.
So that's the difference. I'm not going to go and start a business or do something that I don't know anything about without people that have extensive track records. So am I likely to go just start something? It's pretty unlikely. I'm likely to go look at something that's broken and say, okay, I can take some fundamental skills and bring people in and go do that, buy that, be a part of that, and grow that. It's kind of the difference between saying, okay, I want to go fly. So you could either say, I'm going to go buy a bunch of pieces to an airplane and put it all together. And you're looking at the runway and there's like a ton of pieces, 8 billion pieces, or you just go buy the plane and hire the pilot.
Right.
So I'm more looking at that. I'm looking at, okay, the plane that has an issue, but let's go find the people. And it's harder that way. It's easier to say, I'm going to go start something because, like, okay, you can literally say that in your business.
Yep.
But but after having started so many of these things, the amount of years it takes to go there, you got to be committed. Most people think, okay, I'm in and out because I've heard of WhatsApp. And in 18 months, it went to 26 billion or whatever these things are. And that's not reality.
No.
But people think that because they saw it on Instagram or they heard about it in Forbes that, oh, I'm going to model that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's the exception, not the rule.
It's the exception. And you can always have the tail of the bell curve happen. But if that's your plan, if that happens, that's a cool surprise. Never, ever, ever plan on it because, okay, it's like saying, okay, my plan is I'm going to win the lottery. And those tails are the lottery. And when somebody does it multiple times, they are the tail. Like Elon has multiple billion-dollar companies, but he's an alien.
Yeah.
Like I don't plan on
works
that.
100 hours. Yeah. Doesn't see any of his friends, family, sleeps under his desk. I mean, dude's a nut.
Yeah, and so we can choose to go down that path, but there's also a very rational path to create wealth and to pivot from a job or whatever. And it is not saying, okay, I'm going to go from zero to hero at $1 billion. It's from people say, I want to make $1 billion. I'm like, you haven't even made 100,000 or $1 million, and you want to go straight to $1 billion because you want 3 commas? Like, forget the commas. Go out there and see if the market even cares. And if it does, go get really good at it and bring great people, and then you'll watch this thing, and they naturally grow if you put fuel into them and you put the right people. But people get this stuff wrong because their ego gets all involved.
Yeah, time is a great equalizer for sure. And the one thing I've seen talking to well over 100 entrepreneurs now, kind of having the same conversation, is business 1 is like, kind of successful. Business 2, they get a ton of success. And then they all of a sudden do have this, what feels like overnight success, because round 3, they're just smarter. And one of the things that I heard you just say is partnerships, right? Buying into companies where there's great leadership. You also have a great partner in the EQRP business, which has helped you guys be tremendously successful. Can we just talk a little bit about that? How do you identify that? I think a lot of people who are thinking about making that transition sometimes think like, oh, me and this coworker work together, or me and this other guy got this idea, so we're going to go into business together. And that can be the worst move possible. So what's your wisdom on partnerships?
Well, partnerships is marriage.
Yeah.
And just because you like somebody doesn't mean you go marry and get in bed with them.
Marriage with a prenup is what I say.
Yeah. I mean, prenup. And reality is you want to know, is this somebody that, in a way, I can see myself growing old with, that I can fight with, and I'm not going to just abandon. Like I've not been married. except I have been in business. And I mean, partnerships are real, they really are married. And I've had really bad partnership marriages in business. I've had people that have stolen millions of dollars from me. I've had people that have thrown me under the bus in legal environments. That happens in marriage, where you end up in a divorce and you're like, I didn't realize you hated me that much. And so I've seen all that stuff. And I also think that partnerships can be a great accelerator. They can take 1 and 1 and turn it into 10.
Yep.
And so it's not just two people. It's, one of the things that people do is they argue about, should I have somebody that's the same as me because we get along, or should I have somebody that's opposite of me because, look, if two people do the same thing, you don't have a partner. You just have somebody that you're trying to figure out how to get them to do your stuff, probably.
Right.
And so then they're going to be irritated because you're not working, because they're doing all the work. So I think you really have to date in partnership, and oftentimes partners aren't necessary, that hiring people is a better plan. Partnership is, I heard somebody years ago say, the only time you want a partner is if you're going to take a loss. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose a business. What it means to me is that you're going to have hardship. You're going to have losses. You're going to lose money. Things are going to go wrong. And you have a partner so that you're going through this not alone. Yep. Because going through pain when you have something, you get sued, you have months where you're bleeding out your orifices. When that happens, there's something really valuable about being able to crack a beer with somebody that's like bleeding with you and you're like commiserating.
Yeah.
And then you're dreaming about how you're going through this thing. And then you can look back, because you go through some crap and then you get to the other side and you're doing it and you're like, okay, cool, that was amazing. And then you're like telling people and nobody really gets it because nobody went through it.
Yeah. They just see the success.
They just see the success. And the person that went through it with you, like, you have these stories and this life experience shared. It's why it sucks to these people that go and they make all this money and then they're on the mountaintop by themselves. They never built relationships. They didn't have partnerships. They were the only owner of their thing. I think that's one of the missing pieces of business that people don't realize is so valuable.
100%. So I want to dive into the EQRP business and your partner, David Morris. But you've decided to dedicate your life to helping successful people, high-income earners, take control, checkbook control over their retirement plan by way of a qualified retirement plan that they self-custody effectively and manage themselves rather than using a third party. I love that. I am a customer, which is how we got to know each other. David actually was the one that sold me into my account, but I heard you on a podcast just like this. But why dedicate your life to that? Obviously, you got other things going on with Vitruvian and My Gold Advisor and all that. But why EQRP?
Well, so when I mentioned back in 2010, there was this period after I got fired of being a volunteer for Peter Schiff, and I went off and I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And it was like all these different options. And when I narrowed it down and finally said, okay, I'm going to do the one thing. What's the one thing? And this is like Gary Keller's The One Thing. Like, what's the one thing that makes everything else either irrelevant or easier? And I was having these experiences. Like, one of the experiences was my dad got really sick, and he made this, before he got sick, I watched him in retirement where he didn't have very much money. He played by the rules, and he was basically broke, and so he's waiting for his government check, his Social Security and his pension from the military. And I was like, okay, this is embarrassing.
Right.
And he's had this whole strategy around timing the stock market, and I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. and so then when he got towards the end of his life, he told me, we were sitting down, and he said, man, there were just so many things that I wanted to do. And he had like 6 weeks left to live. And it hit me that money had prevented him from living the life that he dreamed of. Right. And I thought, okay, well, all right, so that's terrible. And that was a warning. Like, how do I fix that for me? How do I fix that for other people? And what I started to realize when I dug into it is most people's wealth is tied up in their house and their 401k. And I say that it's one of those two things because most people, if they have wealth, that's it. I'm not talking about the edges of the bell curve. I'm talking about most of society they have maybe a 401k and they have the equity in their house. And so they're like, all right, I hope this is enough. Most people don't realize that they don't realize their options. What they've been brainwashed. Right. And so they have their retirement account and they go, well, I'm going to watch this roller coaster. I'm on the roller coaster. This sucks. It goes up, it goes down. I don't know if I'm going to have enough. And when I was digging into the tax code back in 12, 13, and I ended up writing the book, the QRP book, I realized that there were a lot more options and people had no idea because there was so much misinformation. Like misinformation didn't start with Trump and Russia. Misinformation was like, it's like old, man.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's way out there. And there's
And the financial institutions have been at the epicenter of a lot of that because they want you to do a certain thing and push your money in a certain way.
that's how they make money.
Yeah, if
They
you don't put
make
your money in the banks or the traditional 401k services, or they've been talking about alternative assets is too risky forever now.
Yeah, it's too risky for them
Compared
because
to
they don't
what?
get their fees.
Exactly,
So it's really risky.
They even made laws that call it selling away. I can't tell you to do real estate because we haven't vetted the deal.
Right, and that's on purpose because they haven't figured out a very easy way for them to make AUM, assets under management fees, and all their other fees. So they keep you confused and scared. Like, oh, look, I'm the one with all the credentials. Have you seen my name? I have alphabet soup after it. So I'm the one that knows this stuff, and you're too stupid because you're just a doctor or you're just a janitor or whatever. And so they basically make you feel inadequate, and you go, okay, and then you just kind of follow along. And there are some great advisors out there that have really taken their craft to heart. They're very smart. They're very successful. I think, unfortunately, most advisors, and I say this truly, most advisors are salespeople that don't have any wealth.
Right.
And so it's like the old thing about Wall Street. It's the only place where people in Rolls Royce go and take advice from people that got to work on the subway. Like, it makes no sense.
Right.
How we're communicating. But the EQRP, that idea, it was this idea that where people could actually control and drive and not just hope. Because I don't believe smoking hopium is a good strategy for wealth or security or anything else, for freedom. But yet that's what people are doing. They're smoking all this hopium, and instead we can have a decision and then a plan. And that's what the EQRP is all about. It's about giving people control, taking it away from Wall Street, giving them control, and they can invest. Like we were talking about how you'd look at options to invest some retirement money in real estate, and people were like, that's
risky. You can't do that.
That would be a terrible idea.
Yeah, because we had a when I was still with the marketing and technology company, we had switched from one provider to another provider that allowed us to manage our own money, which I was super excited about. So the only thing I could manage, though, were stocks. They wouldn't let me move any money into real estate investments or real estate syndications because they hadn't vetted it. Mind you, I was killing them with my own portfolio management of the stocks, right? I mean, outpacing all the funds and crap that they were pushing everybody else into. That's what set me on the journey. That was the catalyst event. Plus, I was halfway out the door thinking about, fully going into all the other businesses that I had started and taking the entrepreneurial leap. So I knew I needed to have another way to tax shelter, but also get checkbook control. Like, in the event that I needed to write myself a loan or a check to go leverage for a business opportunity, I wanted to be able to do that. So I had talked to a ton of different people, and including my wealth manager. And he told me, oh, yeah, we do those. When I talked to him about a qualified retirement plan, his response was, oh, we do those. And I go, oh, he's like, it's just a solo 401k. And I'm like, I don't think it's a solo 401k. I think it's a little different. So for the audience listening, a two-part question. What makes EQRP so special? And how does that compare to like a solo 401k or a self-directed IRA?
So when most people think about self-directed, they think about anything outside of just their Wall Street 401k with mutual funds. What they typically bump into is they're thinking about it, Google shows it to them, it's a self-directed IRA or a solo 401k. And so you can get these things at banks. Basically, banks will give you an IRA that you have sort of control of. You can go to Charles Schwab and get a solo 401k, and they're free. And what people don't realize is that these are names. Solo, it just means there's an individual and you are the company.
Right.
That's all it means. A self-directed IRA means it's an IRA that you actually get to do some controlling, but not total control of. And so the difference between those ideas or those products and EQRP is EQRP, you legitimately get full control. You have, it's built differently. It's kind of like saying, people bring this up all the time, well, what's different? And I say, well, what's different between a Ford and a Ferrari?
Yeah.
What's the difference? They're both cars. They both have four wheels. They both get you from A to B. It's what's under the hood and how you can maneuver and what you're able to do. Ultimately, you have the ability to invest into things like you're talking about real estate. You can invest. You can loan yourself money. You can't do that with IRAs. With solo 401ks at Schwab, they'll let you direct your stuff into stocks that they sell you. But I remember years ago one of our clients wanted to use a Schwab 401k, their solo 401k, to invest in a private equity deal. And the amount of brain damage, and ultimately Schwab said no. Their document said, if you want to do something that's outside, like a private deal, it's approximately 4 to 6 weeks for us to review it. So they did it, and then they denied it. And I was like, okay, and it was a legitimate deal. There was nothing wrong with the deal, but Schwab didn't feel comfortable.
Right.
So what happens with EQRP is you're in charge. People say, well, who's in charge? Who's the trustee? You're the trustee. Who's the TPA, the third-party administrator? You're all the pieces. You get to be in control. This is why Wall Street doesn't talk about it, because they lose control.
Yep.
It's all about who controls it, and EQRP is the ultimate control of your retirement money.
Yeah, they make it super confusing and make it seem like all the back office on that is super challenging and overwhelming. And that's essentially the problem that you guys have solved. But what I love that you've done, and you've taken even a step further, is, okay, great, I want checkbook control over my money. Now you're teaching people how to deploy it. Like, it's one thing to say you have checkbook control. It's another thing to say, like, hey, here's how you vet a sponsor. Hey, here's what a good deal looks like. This is what these different acronyms you're going to come up against are. Here's all the different ways you can deploy. And you built the team around that, where the customers can turn, that are advisors. They're not saying, hey, here's what you need to do with your money. It's just asking some questions. And then on top of that, you layered in other investment platforms for them. Vitruvian Investments, My Gold Advisors. You got the Frame Tech deal, which I think kind of operates under the Vitruvian arm. But let's talk a little bit more about those companies and why that part of the business, I think, is what makes it unique. It's one thing to say, hey, here's your account, great, have good luck out there. It's a different thing to say, hey, we're going to walk with you on this journey.
Well, I think one of the things that we do is when we're helping people set up their accounts and then they have control, we also share what we're doing, like right. personally. And so what people, I think there's a lack of integrity in general, because people will say, oh, you should do this. Well, no, I'm not doing that. Just do it as I say, not as I do. And so over the years, I've been doing things, whether it's private equity investments, whether it's real estate, whether it's gold and silver, whether it's crypto. Like, I'm doing these things, and people were asking about them. So what made sense was to find a way to create a lot of opportunity for people to go and participate in those. And so we built platforms, and we built separate companies that we know because we built them. And so we're not saying, oh, go check out Billy Bob over here, has a great pro forma. We're saying, okay, well, we've actually built this, and we've vetted these things, and we participated. So, like, when we're sharing something, for me, I don't go and share something and say this is a good idea unless I've got millions of dollars of my own money right. on the line first, and then I'm gonna share it, because I think that I've seen most deals that are out there, the people that are sharing them or that are selling them, they're not going to be crucified if the deal doesn't go well. I am. And that is a huge difference. And so anybody, if you're looking at a deal or you're thinking about a deal, one of the first questions is, how much pain are you going to have if this thing goes sideways?
Right.
And so that's why these things were built. Like in the gold and silver space, I happen to like that. I've been around it for my entire life. And so I think that there's value, given what's happening in the monetary system, that we're going through a reset now. It's actually happening in real time. And what is not going to reset is gold and silver. Right. It's the same gold and silver today as it was 5,000 years ago. It's the same stuff. And I like the stuff that we're teaching people is find real things. Like you'd mentioned HVAC, or you have this gym, have this idea around fitness. Okay, we have a manufacturing plant. We're building floors and walls and trusses of houses. These are real things. Nobody goes, I don't understand. You have a gym. That doesn't make any sense to me. How do people make money in a gym? They look at you and they're like, oh, okay, duh.
Yeah.
And like building a wall for a house, like that makes sense.
I make money right here.
Yeah, it's right there. The guns on the show.
That's all it's for.
I mean, and this is what we built platforms around real things. Yeah. And so we've got our education, we've got the opportunities. And David and I were just sitting there on a chairlift a few years ago, and we said there's a missing piece. People they're looking for ways to deploy. How can we help them, and not just say, okay, hey, we're gonna go do a deal. We don't do deals with people and get kickbacks. We just, that's not
You're
our
the
model.
lead sponsor on everything.
We're actually an active member of what we do.
Right.
So that's part of the model that we decided we're not going to play that game. And it's, everybody can have their own game. I think one of the problems I have with people that are doing deals and they're getting kickbacks and stuff, they don't disclose it. Right. So you really don't know, is this person my friend and referring something, or are they getting a fee for the thing? I'm not opposed to fees, but you got to tell people, hey, you know what? I'm going to recommend this thing. I get paid if you do it. I just think that that's the legitimate way of doing business, and people are so afraid. If I tell them I'm making money, then they're not going to want to do it. So I better hide it. And we see a lot of that. And I think that there's going to be a lot of fallout from that type of activity. That's not our model. Our model is we're going to go invest in things, and we're going to share the things that we invest in. And
You guys want to join us? Go for it.
right, it's a bigger pie. And that's all it is. We're not going to go buy a house and do a thing by ourselves. We're going to go create a manufacturing disruption system, and we're going to have hundreds of people with us, and we're going to change America. Like, it's a different philosophy. You don't do that crap on your own.
Right.
You got to go do it. Like, you got to bring people in and share the vision. So that's we did all that stuff because we saw the gap. It's like what you're talking about, find a gap and then go fill it. And we didn't see that. We see a lot of people saying, okay, we'll sell you this item, this idea of control of your retirement account, and then good luck. Hope it works out. Or the people that are selling it generally are not out there investing and sharing what they're doing. And I think that's a gap too.
Yeah, totally. I want to talk about gold and silver and Bitcoin, because you actually like both.
Mm-hmm.
And we both know Uncle Peter, Uncle Schiff. We've been following Peter Schiff for a long time. Peter, if you're watching this, you'd be very proud. Damien's still buying gold and silver.
And Bitcoin, which you would not like at all.
So that's the dichotomy, right? Of like, because I feel like there's these two camps that like, oh, if you're a gold bug, then you can't be a Bitcoin bug. What's your thought and thesis? You alluded to it a little bit about hard money assets. Gold, I think, is one of those. I think we both agree that Bitcoin is a form of hard money, but a little easier transportationally, functionally within society. But you're still buying gold. So I guess what's the plug on those two things?
So I like those things because the government doesn't control them.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the ultimate reality is that they really don't have counterparty risk. And gold and silver do not. When you're holding gold and silver, there is no counterparty. That means somebody else can't manipulate. They can manipulate the spot price. Like whatever price you see on the internet or something of gold, that's one thing. And then the reality of this value, it has value, it's physical value. No, it's just, okay, gold is gold. That 1 ounce of gold is still worth 1 ounce of gold tomorrow.
Right.
And so the dollar has different versions of its value. They keep getting less. You can get, it's less and less eggs next week and next month. So I've liked gold and silver for a long time. There's also something about having God's money in your hand.
Yes.
And feeling I've found that when I've gone out and accumulated it, there's an attraction. It's weird. Like I accumulate that and I give away money. Yep. And those both do have this weird magnetic thing that happens with wealth. And it works for me. So I think it works for a lot of people when they do that. The reason I like Bitcoin is because it's not controlled by a central bank. It's not controlled by a government. It's code and it's clean. So math works for me.
Yeah.
Like there's, I think it was Andrew Yang that had a math pin when he was running for president. It said, "Make America Think Again," or "Make America Think," something. Anyways, I like Bitcoin because there's nothing behind the curtain. When you look at the Federal Reserve, when you look at the U.S. government, I dated a congresswoman a couple years ago, and I remember seeing that behind the curtain stuff in D.C., and I was like, this is the most corrupt thing. Everything is pay to play. Everything is for sale. Everything's for sale. You get to be on committees because your PAC gives more money to the Republican PAC or the Democratic PAC than the other person. You get to be on more TV, on more hearings and things like, and then you get access to people in D.C. because you gave them money. That's it.
Yeah.
Again, so I look at those and I go, how do I get my dollars out of dollarhood? How do I get them out of that control? How do I put them in my control? And Bitcoin is, it can't be manipulated. It's just, it is what it is. And it's got 13 years of track record. I like the fact that you can carry $100 billion worth of Bitcoin across a border without a problem. You can carry it in your head.
What do you say to the people who, because I hear this every time, I'm sure you do too. It's like, oh, but the government, they can step in and they're not going to let you spend that. Or, yeah, I just don't trust it because, it's digital and it could be hacked or whatever, which you and I both know is not true. But how do you help people through that? Like if you're listening to this and you maybe don't own Bitcoin, which I think you should, what do you tell them?
Well, for one, I tell every human being in the world should own Bitcoin. That's a very big statement to say everybody should do something.
Right.
And I say that because Bitcoin is the ultimate. It's the ultimate crypto. I find myself becoming more and more of a maximalist. Not that I don't love other crypto ideas because I think they solve a lot of problems. Like when you have tokenization of assets and people can actually have liquidity. Like there's a lot of really cool things around the crypto space. The thing I like about Bitcoin is it's proven. And and everybody should understand what it's like to be able to control your money. Because right now, people go, well, Bitcoin can be hacked. No, it actually can't be hacked. It's never been hacked. The code is clean, and you have this network that has to validate and verify everything, or things get kicked out. The great thing about Bitcoin is that you can't have, there's no way for it to be printed. There's no way for it to be seized. Like if you have it in your head, how is that going to happen? How is it going to be seized? There is a control there. Can your checking account get hacked? Yes, all day long. Have had it happen multiple times with businesses and things, and watch the money disappear, and then you have to sue banks, and they don't care. We had one business years ago that had a couple $1 million that was literally just wired overseas, and it took us a year to get the money back, and they didn't care. And there's
no urgency.
No, and the FBI doesn't care because it's not 100 million or $1 billion, and there's no foreign actor. There's no Biden interest involved. So, you're on your own.
Good luck.
And yeah, so when people say, "Well, I don't trust Bitcoin," I'm like, "You trust what? The dollar?"
Compared to what? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, what do you compare? I actually trust Bitcoin. I don't trust the dollars. I use them because right now our system, you can move stuff around. Government can't seize Bitcoin. I mean, they can come over and say, "Give us your keys, give us your codes." But I mean, you have to be, set up the Silk Road or something. Like, you've got to do something pretty hardcore. That just doesn't, unless you're in Canada and Trudeau will just come in there and say, "Okay, we're freezing all your stuff on Coinbase." Right. Like,
that's why you don't put it on Coinbase. You put it in cold storage. Different top podcast, but
100 million% do that stuff. I mean, you do have more and more concern from tyrants and oligarchs and things. They're saying, okay, we don't want people to have control of their money, so they're pushing back. You see it with Gensler and the SEC. You see it with some of these politicians that are trying to figure this out. Meanwhile, crypto is still happening. It's a global network. It's going to happen, and it's going to just go wherever it's protected, whether it's Singapore or Dubai or Switzerland or these different places. And so maybe the U.S. ends up being a laggard. And what you have is you have people like Cynthia Loomis that are really trying, U.S. Senator from Wyoming, that are really trying to get America positioned.
It's Catherine?
Cynthia?
Oh, Loomis.
Yeah, Cynthia Loomis, Senator Loomis. And then Caitlin Long is also in Wyoming. Okay. Like there's a lot of these C's.
Yeah, C's and L's.
yeah. It's true. I never thought about that. But so there's some activity, but you've got a lot of entrenched interests. And part of that is, if you really think about why this is happening, the military-industrial complex feeds on fiat currency. Like, to have wars, we need to have lots of cash. And what's cash? It's made up money. It's not money. But if you can print it, you can go to war forever. My friend G. Edward Griffin wrote a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, and he talks about the whole playbook. And if you want to, it was a conspiracy book 30 years ago, and now it's like, oh, this is the playbook.
The Federal Reserve, right?
Yeah, the Federal Reserve and Congress and how they're printing. And you can't do that with Bitcoin. You can't do that with gold-backed money. And so I like it. I like this because it takes away the ability to go to war endlessly. You only go to war if there's an actual need for war, and it's very rare that there's a need for war. So I like Bitcoin because it's really about peace. It's about honesty. It's about truth. Dollars, yens, euros, the entire world is set up on a fiat system. So I believe in honest commerce. I'm a big Ron Paul fan. He said we can get rid of war if we actually trade, if we focus on trading. Because like, you look at countries that are next to each other that are trading, they don't go to war. One of the great things that we could do is start working with energy, like having power lines going between countries. They don't blow each other up because they're reliant on each other. And open free trade is the same thing with open free Bitcoin exchange. When you have dollars and the government and the Federal Reserve can keep devaluing them, they're stealing from everybody. And so it's not really free trade. It's like, how fast can I get rid of these damn things before they steal them from me? So I like Bitcoin because of that. And I think that we're heading down a road where people are going to trust fiat currencies less and less. Yes. And I think that the only reason people don't buy into Bitcoin is because they haven't done it yet. I always tell people, if you're interested in learning about something, if you want to go invest in it, go buy a little piece of it, do something, get started, and that's the same with Bitcoin. Everybody should have some. Go buy $10 worth.
So here's my story with Bitcoin. It's 2010, maybe almost 2011. I'm hanging around a bunch of web developers, and they're like, "Dude, you got to learn about this Bitcoin thing." I'm like, "That's ridiculous. That'll never happen." Back then, you had to get an onion router in order to access the Bitcoin network and be able to get some Bitcoin. And as I came to understand it, it was a lot of these preconceived notions in and around how I thought the banking and monetary system worked. The one thing that makes Bitcoin unique is it's peer-to-peer. So they would have to ban the internet for you and I to be able to not be able to do a transaction.
Right.
And when you put that in perspective, it changes the dynamic because everybody assumes everything has to run through the bank. We're like, no, we're just cutting the bank out of the equation. The second part of that is the hacking part. It's not centrally controlled, unlike Ethereum, which is. And it would take a 90% consensus to change the protocol, which means we can't agree. Half the country can't agree who they want to vote on. So we're not going to get consensus on changing that. And if we did, then then it probably really wasn't meaningful and we needed to make a change. So that's what I love about it. That said, I'm still sprung on gold as well. And I think everybody should own some of that. It's just less, the utility of it in a modern society is becoming less and less. But long and the short, once upon a time before banks, we just bartered for stuff. Like, I want that microphone. Here's this water, and like, that's the same thing that we're getting back to. It's just direct peer-to-peer transactions. So I love it.
And it's honest. Right. There's all these intermediaries. When you think about all the intermediaries are just taking a piece. It's like when you buy something on Amazon and you end up spending $65 for this thing, and you're like, that's amazing. I'm getting a damn toaster oven that does these things and it does my laundry too. It's like amazing, $65. The actual cost of that thing from the manufacturer in China is like $6 or $8 or whatever it is, and then all that middle is all the marketing, it's all the middleman, it's the intermediary. Same exact thing with the financial system. It's just all of these pieces. They're taking a piece of you, and what they're doing is they're stealing your prosperity.
Yes,
and they feel entitled to it because they've been doing it, and then they've been trained to do it, and they've been trained that they're entitled to it because they're creating this incredible value. They're not creating jack shit.
Yep.
They're creating no value. They're just stealing. And so when you have peer-to-peer, the math does all the work. It's a beautiful thing. And the financial system hates that. They hate that. And I think what we're going to see is a lot of systems that create a lot of the legal system, the accounting system. Like, you think about all of the wasted energy that is consumed because of disagreements and moving documents around and asset ownership and things. The legal system gets disrupted completely with the blockchain system.
Correct.
And so, but just going back to Bitcoin, what we're doing is we're finding efficiencies, and we're squeezing out all of the unnecessary stuff for human interaction. Human interaction is very, very simple. We come to an agreement and we do this thing. What's happened is the leeches have built up an entire infrastructure around taking from us, and then we just slowly allowed it. It's a slow boil. I think we're going in the other direction now. It's going to be a war. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be freedom versus tyranny. You're going to see Bitcoin versus central digital bank currencies. Like, that stuff it's real. It's happening in China. There's a lot of push by governments that want to do the control. They want to have the centralized thing where they control it. They can turn your money off. And then you've got Bitcoin that I find it interesting that BlackRock is now a big fan of crypto, right?
Like 2 years ago, they're like, oh, that's stupid.
No, Larry Fink was like, this is the dumbest thing. Well, because he was making money outside of the system. Once they realized they could make money with Bitcoin.
They always do that until they're on the right side of the trade.
Yes.
Right? It's the same thing they did with the financial crisis in 2008.
It's consistent. When you want to know what's happening, just go look back in history, and you'll know what's going to happen going forward. Just look back far enough. What the only concern I had with ETFs is that you say, okay, well, 90% consensus for something to happen, or whatever this needed amount of, we agree. If one organization, BlackRock's very interesting because they have this interesting control because of all the mutual funds over board of directors for all the Fortune 500 companies, because they have a proxy vote for all these people that have mutual fund shares. Larry Fink essentially has been able to direct policy, and like when you think about the woke movement, where's ESG coming from? It was from Larry Fink. Well, now he's saying he's not a fan of ESG. And I'm like, you were driving the damn thing because you controlled boards of directors. Well, what happens when Larry Fink, through BlackRock, has $500 billion of Bitcoin? Well, it's a concern, except how's he going to get $500 billion worth of Bitcoin? Bitcoin mostly is locked up. There's a very small percentage of it that's actually floating. Most people are sitting there holding.
Right.
And so that concern that's come up that I've had, I thought, this is very unlikely because most people that have Bitcoin they're holding it because they trust it. They're not out there going, okay, Larry Fink, you can buy my Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Then what am I going to buy? I trust Bitcoin more than the other things. That's why I have it in the first place. Yep. So I basically talked myself through this whole concern and said, I'm not that concerned. Larry Fink can do what he wants. I still trust I trust humanity and they're wanting to have something honest, and I think that they're more likely to hold it.
Smart. So to put a bow on it, as entrepreneurs, we don't like walking with the traditional system. EQRP is about bucking the traditional financial system. And within that, you can buck the financial system even more by getting some Bitcoin, getting some gold, buying some real estate, and doing, alternative asset investing. So I love that. What's on your mind right now that's keeping you awake at night? Either because you're excited or because maybe you're planning concern for the future.
Yeah, I'm excited about the businesses that that I get to be a part of. That with the people that are a part of them, and that's the most exciting thing. Early in my career, it was mostly about me just grinding, and I think that that's one of the coolest things, to have an organization, have people around that are growing and being able to do things that help them grow.
Yep.
So I get more excited about that. The community, we have thousands of people in our community that are EQRP members, and the investors with Vitruvian. I get to see everybody succeed. I get to see their dreams fulfilled, and knowing that I get to play a little part in that. And oftentimes it's really just reflecting back what people already know. It's just nobody's ever told them that, yeah, you're not crazy. Yeah, you can actually do this, and yeah, you can have control. And so I love that. I'm concerned that so many people are giving over power to the influencers that don't know what the hell they're doing, that they're saying, please save us, to the politicians, that what they're not doing is not taking responsibility. I see a lot of people abdicating responsibility and pushing it on whoever is going to pander to them.
Yep.
And that really concerns me. I think that's where people like Adolf Hitler came to power, because people were afraid, they were scared. And it's unfortunate. So I'm not a big fan of these charlatans that are floating around on Instagram. Or I like people like you that are out there doing stuff and talking about it. I don't like the people that are just talking about it. That doesn't
Not doing stuff.
Yeah, but they get people that are so miserable in their lives that they're willing to chase and say, yeah, I love this person. And so that concerns me, the direction we're going. I'm hopeful that you have people like, and who knows where Elon takes his thing with X, but I'm hopeful that people will step up and start creating environments where people can have honest conversations without censorship. So there's some pretty big concerns I have with policy, but I love that, like, especially with Bitcoin and the network effect globally, I think people are waking up. So there's a war between tyranny and freedom, and there's a war between openness and closedness.
Yeah.
And so, I think ultimately truth will win. But I'm not convinced that we're not going to go through some tough stuff in the meantime. So I think my focus is staying focused on the people that I can actually touch and influence,
Right.
and concern myself less with what Joe Biden and Hunter are doing today at breakfast. Like, I can't do anything about that, and that's not going to serve anybody here for me to just go on and on about that. I mean, I think other people they're going to spend their time doing it. It's not going to be me.
Yeah, agreed. What do you think? This is actually, you're a real estate guy. You listen to plenty of Bigger Pockets. They always ask the question, what makes people successful versus those that are not. But in a more general sense for entrepreneurship, what's the difference between those who become successful entrepreneurs and those who give up, quit, or never get started?
I mean, it's funny. The answer's in the question. It's people that just don't quit. They're not willing to quit. And usually it's people that there's a time to quit. So there's a Winston Churchill thing that you've probably seen it with this. It says never, 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 never quit. Like that was the thing. Until it's time to quit is my add-on. There is a time when you say no. It's like, this doesn't work. This is the wrong thing. It's like in 1920, if you said, I am going to create a reimagined buggy whip. Okay, that was a dumb idea. You could do that thing for a year or 2 or 5, and then you're going to be like, okay, this is a dumb idea. This actually we're heading in the wrong direction here.
Right.
And so I think it's the discernment around knowing when to quit, and it's knowing when to not quit. And that is not something you can learn in a school. That is, and you're going to be wrong about that a lot. It's, I think, one of the most powerful things and one of the most important things with entrepreneurs is having the right people that are influencing you around you. And so it'll help you to figure out when you're supposed to keep going. And oftentimes you're 2 inches from the end zone and you don't even realize it. And that's where a lot of people quit. They're like, oh, it's just too hard.
Yep.
And so for me, I maybe I'm just a glutton for pain. I'm just like, yeah, I don't care how many times Mike Tyson can punch me in the face, or Darius can punch me in the face, and it's like, all right, I'll just take another one. Like And maybe part of that was like I started training in martial arts 23 years ago, and it hurt. Like there was a lot of pain, and then eventually pain just becomes part of the process. And you're like, okay, all right, yeah, okay, go ahead and I'll get out of the way this time. Matt, when you're punching me in the face, I'll actually move because I have muscle memory or flat nose memory. Like I get it. There, I think the difference is it's a level of commitment to the pain, and deciding that the pain is not something that's going to get in the way. People are afraid of pain, and you see this more and more. It's one of my concerns. People are very soft, very weak. We have men becoming girls and girls that want to be alphas. We have all this weird stuff, and there's a very soft nature of humans, especially in Western society.
Easily offended.
And so they don't want to stick out. An entrepreneur is somebody that's going to stick out and get stepped on a lot, and punched and driven over and spit on by society in general. Like,
because you're doing the exact opposite. You're putting the flag in the ground and saying, I'm responsible for everything that happens.
Right.
I'm pointing in and not out, right? That's the difference.
And that offends people. Yeah. That makes them crazy. And people are they want to be able to blame people. And so it's really fascinating. Here, you'll have people trying to tear down success. They'll try to, we look up to Tom Brady, we look up to the Kardashians, but if you go out there and you make a bunch of money, it's like, oh, evil rich person. It's like, wait, because I built this business.
While they're drinking their Starbucks.
Right. It's like there's this hypocrisy that's going on. And so, again, who you're around is one of the biggest decisions you're going to make, because if you're around entrepreneurs, then everything's normalized. If you're around your cousins who all work at corporate America or the government, they're going to be looking at you like you're a crazy person, or, well, how did you get that money? You must have cheated. I remember 20 years ago, I had those ideas from when I was a kid. I remember thinking I was around some people and they were worth a ton of money, many millions, tens of millions. And I remember thinking, they must have cheated. Yeah. And I was like, why am I'm a damn entrepreneur. I'm out there making my millions and I'm thinking they cheated. Where is this coming from? And it was deep rooted into me. And that's what's happening in society. People they're resenting the wealthy. And one of the reasons that they resent the wealthy is because they don't think they can become wealthy. People that think that they can become rich don't try to take down the rich because they want to be them. If you don't think you can become rich, it makes more sense to go attack the rich and try to have the wealth transitioned and repositioned into your account through governments and things. That's one of the things I've seen that's gotten worse. People, they think they can do influencer billions and they can make, or they go, no, I can't do it. And then you just see them saying it's not fair. So you should definitely tax. And I remember Peter Schiff said this. He's like, okay, so I'm already paying like 54% of my income. He was in Connecticut, so of course it's brutal. He would say to people that said that the taxes are too low, he'd say, well, what rate should they be? What would be fair? 60, 70, 80%? What do you suggest? Nobody had a good answer because all they're doing is yelling about how it's not fair. They're not actually, they don't want solutions. And what I love about entrepreneurship is that we have to have solutions or we die.
Yep.
That's the only answer. Solve it or die.
Yeah, I think that's why capitalism gets such a bad rap. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely some crony capitalism, but traditional capitalism is like you either make a good product and people buy it, or it's crap and they don't. And that's how the world works. And that's not the world we've been living in. So I'm just going to blame you so that I can get something as a byproduct of it. Like, that's been the game. Well, if people connect with your story, they want to follow along with what you got going on. What's the best platforms to do that on? You have a podcast, right?
Yep. Financial Underdogs is the podcast.
You're on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, great place to visit.
Yep. YouTube, growing YouTube channel?
YouTube.
And any other place where you like to hang out?
You know, it's funny. The question is, where am I? And people are like, I've seen you here. I've seen you on Instagram. I'm like, I'm on Instagram? I didn't even know it was Instagram. So apparently there's
Great
other
job,
places.
Nick.
Yeah. There's apparently it's happening all over. One of the things that people oftentimes say this, but then they get surprised. So if somebody reaches out and they're like, hey, I'm so and so on LinkedIn, most people, if they have big followings or whatever, they tend to not. They've got handlers, and I've had some people help me, but you don't really get to have interaction. I like people that reach out and actually have ideas and game plans and don't just have a problem. Like, I like people that want some feedback. So I'll actually interact with people, and it's a lot of fun for me. But I'm going to make a suggestion. Anybody, if you're reaching out, if you're like, okay, I'm going to go and try to talk to that person that I heard, or or this big name or whatever, don't just go vomit on them.
Yeah.
Like, no, for one, they're just going to like delete you or block you or both. And you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to waste a bunch of time. So, and don't just go spam people.
Yeah.
Like, don't reach out on LinkedIn and say, hey, I want to connect. And by the way, I got this great thing I want to sell you. Like, I'm going to block you. But if you say, hey, I've got this thing and here's my idea and I'm stuck on this thing and here's a couple of solutions, man, I'm going to give you feedback. Like, and I'm going to do that because I want to see people succeed.
And you're an entrepreneur. You like solving problems like that.
That I can't help it.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
So what you're saying is you do your own stunts, meaning you manage your own DMs.
Just me and Tom Cruise and I, just like, that's what we do, man. It's MI16. There we go.
That's awesome. Well, if people wanted to become an EQRP member, what's the best way they can do that?
Visit eqrp.com and download the report, get a copy of the book that we'll give you, we'll send out to you, and just really dig in a little bit, learn more about it. I mean, there's a phase where you need to learn some and then engage. Reach out to the team. We want to help you break your shackles. We want you to have control, and there's only one way that's going to happen. You have to choose it.
I love it. You guys heard it here first. If you're an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur, high income earner, and you want to take checkbook control over your retirement account so that you can start to invest it in things other than the stock market, but you could do the stock market as well if you wanted to, then EQRP is the answer. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. Damien, I can't wait to have you back on again. We're going to be doing a lot of content together in the coming year, which I'm excited about because we're doing some consulting with you guys and just excited to watch you grow. So I appreciate your friendship, brother. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks.